It's all labeling. You label it as a horror film, it's kind of like bargain basement type stuff. If you say it's a thriller, okay, that elevates it because Hitchcock did thrillers. Yeah.
In a good horror thriller, you are right there spinning that chair around in Psycho and finding the skeleton of the mom. You're there in the house, right? In Fatal Attraction, that's why the audience goes nuts. It's a visceral response. Horror is all about a visceral response.
A thriller, a horror film, monster movie, you call it whatever you want to. The movie business, that's all geared to money. They've decided that that's the best way to sell a movie.
The great thing about horror is that it always remains undefinable. Trying to define exactly what horror is nailing Jello to the wall.
Hello, fellow followers. Welcome back to FanZcene. Greg here, and today I have for you, Hollywood is terrified, tries to blame horror fatigue. Yeah, does that sound funny to you? It sounds funny to me. Horror fatigue, that is a new one. But before we get into this, because I'm going to bring up this article and go over what I'm talking about here. But before we get into this, if you liked In Search of Darkness, the 1980s documentaries, as you saw there, they are making In Search of Darkness 1990 to 1994. It covers that decade of the 90s. If you want to purchase that, I will have a link in the description down below. That is my link. You click on that link, you buy it from there. It helps support my channel and allows me to make awesome videos for you guys if you like what I do here. But let's get into this about horror fatigue. What's going on? Horror fatigue. So this is an article from the Hollywood Reporter. It says, why Hollywood is terrified of horror fatigue in 2025. To be honest with you, if you keep hearing that word terrified, and I think that's a big giveaway of what Hollywood is really, really worried about. But we're going to get into this, and I'm going to give you some of my thoughts of this. And it says, with dozens of scary titles headed to theaters next year, execs worry it will be harder than ever for a hit to break out. You don't say. You don't want audiences to be satiated by the time you come along. By Pamela McClintock. Very interesting. Very interesting. Oh, hey, look at this. This is my shirt. Physical Media Show. That's pretty cool. Also, if you want to buy that shirt, I have a link in the description down below. It looks like it's on sale for 30% off Physical Media Show with all my other gear. But anyways, let's get on to the article. I love the monsters here. And it says, in 2022, Parker Finn's Smile became one of the most profitable movies of the year, bringing in more than $217 million on a $17 million production budget. Paramount quickly greenlit a sequel, a no-brainer in an era in which horror is one of the only surefire bets left at the box office. Horror is only one of the bets left at the box office that succeed. And you know what? It has for many, many years. Even when horror, much like the 90s, doesn't seem to be as popular, it still manages to succeed. But let's get into what they have to say here. It says, studios embarked on a horror arms race, locking up talent in first-look deals, hiring execs to focus on the genre, and figuring out how to get more product in theaters. Well, there is your mistake, Hollywood. You're locking up deals. You're getting all this talent together, and you're making product, right? This is why I absolutely cannot stand studios, because it's not studios. Yes, like John Carpenter talked about in the beginning there, it's all money. It's all made for money, and it's never been more worse now than it has ever been, because the money, it's more about product and content than it is about art and allowing certain thing to happen. Funny word, art there, because I'm going to, once again, art, terrified. What are we getting to? What are we getting here to, Greg? Let's continue. It says, 2 years later, Smile 2 arrived during the October 18th to 20th weekend in an entirely different landscape where the marketplace has become increasingly oversaturated, shutting off alarm bells at major indie studios. I'm sorry. I don't feel like horror's been oversaturated. I really don't. I don't think there's been too many released, if I'm honest. Marvel, Star Wars, superhero movies, franchise flops, Disney, the year the blockbuster. Does any of this ring a bell? I mean, I've heard franchise fatigue. I've heard superhero fatigue for years. Now all of a sudden horror, which is actually doing really well right now, and as I mentioned before, continues to always be one of the best performing genres out there. It ebbs and flows. through decades. Sometimes horror is more prevalent, like in the 80s, and then like in the 90s, we see a little lull. But you know what? A lot of those movies went on to become big. The Puppet Master movies in the home video market, all that boomed big time. And like they said, sometimes a horror movie in the theaters was labeled a thriller. So you can't label it. So horror's always been successful, but now they're worried about horror fatigue. Why? What does art and Terrified have to do with anything? I know. I'm getting to the point here. Because I'm not going to read the whole article. I'm getting to it right here. It says, the well-received Smile sequel went up against the second weekend of Cineverse's unrated indie slasher sensation, Terrifier 3, which had opened to a shockingly better than expected $18.9 million the week before. Paramount was confident that Smile 2 would match or outgross the opening of the first film, and while it succeeded with $23 million, there's no doubt that Terrifier 3 ate into its business in the second outing. The latter fell only 51% to $9.3 million. Boom! That's where I'm getting to. The article, I will put a link in the description down below if you guys want to go read the whole article as well, because the article does cover other, movies that released, the horror movies that are releasing, like Long Legs, Late Night with the Devil, and from the indie fair to the studios and how much they weighed. And they tried to make it sound like some of these movies flopped, even like certain movies where they had like $15 million budgets and made like almost $100 million. And that's a flop, though. That's a flop, by the way. But when a superhero movie or like Joker 2, which Terrifier really took down big time. I mean, okay, I'm going to go ahead and pull this down because I'm going to get into all this, because I think what we're getting at here is Terrifier 3. I mean, not 2, Terrifier 3. A fully independent produced horror movie. Damon Leone owns all of it. It's an unrated movie, not even rated by the MPAA, which, as we know, is a horrible organization and plays favorites with certain directors. And they've never liked horror movies. They've never liked Wes Craven. They never liked John Carpenter. But they've liked like Ridley Scott, Tony Scott. They can manage to get away with certain things, like auteur directors or Francis Ford Coppola, which is nothing against. They've liked those type of directors more so than horror movies. They could get away with more in those type of movies than a horror movie. So here we have Damien Leone's Terrifier 3, this very small budgeted horror movie, right? That was that got mega bucks. Yeah, I know 18.3 doesn't sound like a lot when you hear like, the superhero movie opened up to $78 million. I know that sounds big. Those numbers sound big, but when that superhero movie is made for $400 million and it only made $78 million, and it's got to make like $500, $600, $700 million or $1 billion to even be successful, that's where you get in a flop. And like I said, we've heard horror, superhero fatigue, franchise fatigue. Audiences are turning away. Now, all of a sudden, a movie like Terrifier comes out, knocks it out of the park, makes major bank, right? Because this movie was made for very little bit of money, and it's already hugely profitable. And it ate into, by the way, Smile, I know people like Smile, and I'm not trying to put down Smile at all. Smile is a Paramount picture, a big studio picture. Terrifier 3 ate into its debut, right? Because and that's an independent film eating into a studios, and it pissed them off. That's what Hollywood is afraid of. And like I've been talking about this, because I'm a huge supporter of independent film and independent horror. Hollywood is afraid that there is this new wave of independent filmmakers and horror where they can make their movies independently, give the fans what they want. Like I talked with Adam Green, where he talks about how Damon Leone, David Howley Thornton, all them went out and did the work. They went to conventions. They got to know their audiences. They got to let everybody know who Art the Clown was and Terrifier was. So by the time part 2 and 3 came rolling around, Art the Clown was known, and it made it. You see how much money it's made, and now theaters are in this place where they need movies, right? And now they're willing to let these unrated movies be released into theaters. And once again, Hatchet 2 was immediately pulled in 24 hours for being released unrated. Now Terrifier 3 is making major monies, and it's cutting into the Joker. It's cutting into Paramount Pictures profits. I think Hollywood is not scared of horror fatigue. They're scared of independent horror like Terrifier and what those films are starting to accomplish and what it can possibly do to Hollywood. right? And once again, I'm not trying to say if you like Smile and Smile too, I'm not putting those down because those are horror movies. People went and saw them. People like horror movies. There's something about a horror movie that people love being scared. It doesn't matter what kind of horror movie, like monsters, slashers, psychological, thriller, supernatural, ghost, people like that visceral horror response, right? So if you like Smile, that's great. The problem here is the studios are scared. They're scared of what independent film and horror can do, because we're at a new level here where people out there can make their own horror movie or movies independently from the studios and put them in the theaters, and they can start taking money away from the studios. That's all I'm saying. I do not think horror fatigue is a thing. I really think they need to stop worrying about this horror fatigue and all that and everything, and start seeing what's going on, and maybe instead of try to pass blame and try to stop people from succeeding, maybe they should look at themselves and figure out why they're not succeeding and try to fix those problems. Because I truly do not believe there is a such thing as horror fatigue, and I truly believe it is because the art and Art the Clown and the independent spirit that terrifies them from Terrifier and many other horror movies that can now possibly have a big independent boom. But let me know what you guys think about all this in the comment section down below. Do you guys think there's a horror fatigue? Do you think I'm just stupid? Do you guys think that they're terrified of Terrifier 3 and what it did and how it took chunks of money from the studios? Because Damien Leone and that all independent stuff, that organization there, they get all the profits. They don't have to share them with no Paramount Pictures, Warner Brothers, Disney. They don't have to share them. That's all their money, that they will probably put back in Terrifier 4 and Terrifier 5 and whatever else they want to do. So let me know what you guys' thoughts about all this in the comment section down below. And if you liked what you saw here, maybe consider hitting that like button or subscribing and hitting that bell for notifications. That would be awesome if you're in your guys' subscriptions, or possibly share the video out for everybody to see, or join and become a channel member, because that would help out my channel immensely. Thank you, and shout out to all my channel members. I appreciate each and every one of you guys. Thank you guys for being channel members here and for all of your support. And to everybody watching, whether you liked me, hated me, or liked this video, or hated this video, I thank you for sticking this long. Wherever you all are, please have a great, safe, happy, healthy day, morning, afternoon, evening, and night. Always support physical media and independent film, because that seems to be the most popular things right now that the studios don't like for some reason. Godspeed.